Okay, Deuteronomy chapter 8, a little bit of a retrospective here, as well as Moses reminding them of their 40-year journey through the wilderness. It's a short chapter, so it should be pretty good. So the Lord tested the children of Israel in the wilderness for 40 years. Eating manna taught them that man lives by the word of God. Their clothing did not wear out. The Lord chastened them. If they serve other gods, they will perish. So great chapter for us to learn from. Now, verse 1, all the commandments which I command thee this day shall ye observe to do, that ye may live and multiply and go in and possess the land which the Lord sware unto your fathers. Thou shalt remember all the way which the Lord thy God led thee these 40 years in the wilderness, to humble thee, and to prove thee, to know that what was in thine heart, whether thou wouldest keep his commandments or no. And he humbled thee and suffered thee to hunger, and fed thee with manna, which thou knewest not, neither did thy fathers know, that he might make thee know that man doth not live by bread only, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of the Lord doth man live. So Moses is reminding the children of Israel that the 40 years wasn't just 40 years of suffering, but testing, proving the people to build their faith, to test them and try them and help them to build that faith up. Faith is an action word. It's not passive. It has to be doing things, has to be exercised in order to grow. So that's what he was doing, is humbling the people and proving them out. And the whole idea of manna, they're starving. They were starving, and so they just needed something to eat. And so God literally gave them something to eat, and in a miraculous way. But it was a metaphor as well to remind people that you live by what I say, what I give you, basically, not by what you can make yourself and grow on your own. So that's a very important point for us to look at, is how much are we really relying on God? Do we believe that our job is ours and that the money we make is ours and that the efforts and benefits that are coming to our family are all our efforts? Or do we believe that God is really influencing all of that and helping us and giving us those opportunities? I mean, how many near-death experiences have you had when you look at your life and realize, man, yeah, I probably could have died a whole bunch of times. So you might be alive solely because God has allowed you to survive and live because of some of those things. So we want to be very thankful for God and what he's done, and realize that we need to live more by what he has given, more than what man gives. Verse 4 is a really interesting one. It's a bit of a subtle miracle that the children of Israel experienced. Thy raiment waxed not old upon thee, neither did thy foot swell these 40 years. Now, when you do a lot of walking, your feet swell. This is a challenge. If you do a lot of extended hiking, you'll notice that sometimes your feet get bigger. This is a problem you have sometimes. Like, people want to get to their camp and set up camp, and then they take off their shoes. And then sometimes they have a hard time putting their shoes back on, because as you walk, your vertical gravity is pulling down on the water and fluids in your body, and it goes down into your feet. So that's why walking is good, because it helps to keep your lymphatic system and circulatory system moving, so you don't have that settling. But then laying down, where your body can be on the same height, basically, in a horizontal plane, and then that helps deter the effects of gravity to allow those fluids to be reacclimated back through your whole body. But their clothes didn't get old. Now, some people have translated this to say, well, what about the little kids? Because obviously, as a little kid gets bigger, even if it doesn't get old, he's going to outgrow the size. So maybe the clothes adjusted as the child got bigger, kind of like a turtle shell grows as the turtle gets bigger. We don't know for sure if that's true or not. It's an interesting idea. Maybe it's possible. Maybe it's not. They did have some ways of doing clothing, but just very, very limited ways. So maybe they had, instead of the clothes growing with the child, maybe they just had more patchwork stuff, but they found more materials to produce larger clothes for the kids, but they didn't wear out. We know, especially if you have little kids and they wear the same clothes all the time, they wear out. The hems around the bottom of your pants will wear out from being dragged around on the ground. Shirts get threadbare from multiple washes and things. Washing clothes is just as bad as wearing clothes as far as wear and tear on them. So the more you use them, the more you wash them, and the more you wash them, the more wear and tear they get, and it wears them out faster. But their clothes didn't wear out. They didn't have to worry about replacing clothes, which is great. This is kind of a small miracle that they saw that it doesn't really get talked about a lot. Verse 5, thou shalt also consider in thine heart that as a man chasteneth his son, so the Lord thy God chasteneth thee. So good example there. Therefore thou shalt keep the commandments of the Lord thy God to walk in his ways and to fear him. For the Lord thy God bringeth thee into a good land, a land of brooks of water, of fountains and depths that spring out of valleys and hills, a land of wheat and barley and vines and fig trees and pomegranates and olive oil and honey, a land wherein thou shalt eat bread without scarceness. Thou shalt not lack anything in it, a land whose stones are iron, and out of whose hills thou mayest dig brass. Now, interesting that he mentions brass in there, because brass isn't something you find in nature. Brass is a compilation of metals, but what that means basically is copper. You can find copper and other types of metals that you mix together to make, bronze and brass and other things like that as well. So the metals are there to be able to make tools, to make jewelry, to create things with. It's there. He's like, look, guys, this is done. Everything is done for you. Your houses are built, your crops are planted, everything grows, everything's good. You just need to inhabit the land and keep the commandments. God has provided everything for you, literally. All right, so verse 10, again, when thou hast eaten and art full, when thou shalt bless the Lord thy God for the good land which he hath given thee, beware that thou forget not the Lord thy God in not keeping his commandments and his judgments and his statutes, which I command thee this day. So this is again a warning. Guys, God has provided you with everything, but be careful. Do not let this go to your head. Don't get lazy about this and beholden to this. And this happens. We see this all the time in society. The people who struggled and suffered to build a community appreciate the community and respect it and love it and help it grow. Those that grow up in the community don't appreciate it fully and eventually get to a point where they hate the community because they see only the negative of the community. And then there's laziness and problems that happen, and then the community falls apart, and then it collapses, and then people have to rebuild it, and then they appreciate it, and then the other people don't like it and disappreciate it, and it comes back around. This cycle, it's related to the pride cycle that we see in the Book of Mormon numerous times over. I can't remember off the top of my head. There's a gentleman that came up with this cycle and talks about this. He's got like 5 or 6 stages in his version of this cycle that communities go through. We see this in Rome. We see this in Egypt. We see this in Israel. We see this in most countries that happen where it grows up. It gets good, it gets powerful, then it gets lazy, and then it falls apart, and then has to grow up again and get good. The whole idea of hard times make hard people, and hard people make good times. And good times make lazy people, and lazy people make hard times. And hard time, again, it kind of goes around in this cycle. He's warning them of this natural pattern that happens. Be careful. It doesn't have to happen if you don't let it. Basically, this pattern is a result of the challenge of opposition in all things, okay? So if we stay on the good side, the rest of the bad side never happens, never gets there, okay? The pride cycle doesn't have a timing to it. Some generations takes thousands of years to run the whole cycle. Some generations, it's 5 years, and it's gone that whole cycle. So, but he's warning them of, you're going to have this tendency to want to get lazy with your religion and with what you do, because the blessings just become normal. They're no longer blessings anymore. So he's warning them about this, to be careful with that. Verse 14, verse 12, lest when thou hast eaten and art full, and hast built goodly houses and dwelt therein, and when thy herds and thy flocks multiply, and thy silver and gold is multiplied, and all that thou hast is multiplied, then thy heart be lifted up, and thou shalt forget the Lord thy God, which brought thee forth out of the land of Egypt from the house of bondage, who led thee through that great and terrible wilderness, wherein the fiery serpents and scorpions and drought, where there was no water, who brought thee forth water out of the rock of flint, who fed thee in the wilderness with manna, which thy fathers knew not, that he might humble thee, that he might prove thee, to do thee good at thy latter end. And thou shalt say in thy heart, my power and the might of mine hand hath gotten me this wealth. See, like we talked about, we get complacent and think, oh, I did this. I did this. This is me. This is what I did. Forgetting all the things that God has done to get us to that point. Okay. Anybody living in the United States has no way of saying that their life is completely theirs, because the country that you live in was built by God through the founding fathers, and there's no one that disputes that, until it comes to us having to admit that our life is founded upon what they built, and what they built was founded with God. Okay? So our lives are founded with God, because the country that gives us the rights and benefits we have was founded by God. So that is a blessing, again, we have. It's not a direct blessing, but we get the indirect benefits of that blessing. And even directly, there's lots of things in our lives that God has helped us with that we could say that our life isn't fully ours. He is in the details of our life, and that is important. Very, very important that we accept and acknowledge that to him. Okay, an average day, if you have those days where you're like, oh, it's just an average day, no big deal, you need to realize that you have an average day means great blessings. Great blessings for you. Average day means you're alive still. Average day means you're not in slavery. Average day means you have choice and ability to do things. So an average day is actually a blessed day, because God is there to help you. Very, very important to understand. Verse 18, but thou shalt remember the Lord thy God, for it is he that giveth thee power to get wealth, that he may establish his covenant which he sware unto thy fathers, as it is this day. And it shall be, if thou do all forget the Lord thy God, if thou do at all forget the Lord thy God, and walk after other gods, and serve them and worship them, I testify against you this day, that ye shall surely perish. As the nations which the Lord destroyeth before your face, so shall ye perish, because ye would not be obedient unto the voice of the Lord your God. So this is prophecy here. Moses is again warning them. This is the third time I think he has said this. If you keep the commandments, you'll be greatly blessed. If you don't, you're going to be falling apart, just like these nations in front of you are going to be falling apart. So keep the commandments. That is the important part. That's what he's talking about here. So some very great lessons that we get to learn in our life. If you want life to be better for you, follow God. It's probably the one thing you haven't tried most of. You know, most people are worried about their money situation. So what do? They work more hours. Most people are worried about situations in life. So what do? They work more hours. They spend more of their physical health doing things, going after money or fame, or getting their 15 minutes of fame or their fortune or stuff, and realize it's not what God wants. It's not what he wants. Where do he want you to put your priorities? Focus on keeping the commandments and watch him bless your life in ways that you will be amazed at. I can tell you personally, this is what I have done in my life, and it is amazing. It's not easy, definitely not easy, but I can look at my life and say, wow, has he blessed me? So keeping the commandments is just as important as working harder at your job for your success. It does work, and it works better than you ever thought before, because it puts that right combination of stuff together to fit just right. So how can you prioritize God more in your life? That is the important concept and idea that we're getting from this. So think about that and ponder that. What can you do to be better in your life? And thanks for watching. Please share this video with more people to help them understand these principles as well. Leave in the comments what you think about what we're discussing in here also. And we look forward to seeing you in the next chapter to learn more about these admonitions of Moses to the children of Israel.